This is July 15th, 2026. As of today, it's being reported that Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen have just fired missiles into Saudi Arabia. It's important to know at this point of escalation that the Houthis control much of the territory in northwest Yemen, and they've previously disrupted shipping into the Red Sea, which of course routes maritime shipping traffic through the Suez Canal into the Mediterranean. Now, much of Europe depends on these shipping lanes. Now, having said that, if the Houthis use the same playbook as Iran and use drone warfare to close or affect this choke point, these shipping lanes are at risk. The net effect of this, if the war escalates into this arena, will be global depression. And, arguably that gets pretty serious. But only time will tell. I first recorded this a couple of months ago, but it's probably more relevant today than it was then. This is my video newsletter for April 2026. Since my last newsletter, we've entered into a kinetic war with Iran on February 28th. The point to this newsletter is not to debate the merits of the war, but to step back and look at the economics of the situation. One potentially significant event on all of this just happened on March 28th, and at the moment, that's less than a week ago, when Yemen-based Houthis entered the war. To appreciate this, we'll have to take a look at the map. Yemen is right here. It's right below Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia arguably is right below Iraq. Syria's up here, Lebanon, Israel's right here, Iran's over here. Just to give you a feel for the frame of reference, Strait of Hormuz is right here. That's where the battle is right now with Iran. What we've been talking about here is the Gate of Tears. This is the choke point right here. Now, Yemen is basically a fragmented country, but the Houthis control the capital of Yemen and the heavily populated northwestern highlands. They have been fighting a Saudi-led coalition since 2014. Now, that's over 12 years. These guys have been fighting a long time. Now, having said that, the Houthis, or you might even say the country of Yemen, theoretically control the Gate of Tears between the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean, right here. Now, the Red Sea is the passageway up to the Suez Canal and then into the Mediterranean, right up through here. See that? Okay. Now, this is the big deal. The Gate of Tears is a choke point to 40% of all the trade between Europe and Asia. 12 to 15% of all the global maritime trade goes through this gap, and 30% all the global container traffic. Again, this is a big deal. Again, we're talking about 40% of all trade between Europe and Asia and 30% of all global container traffic. You have to pause for a second to actually absorb that. Again, let's go back to the map. At the moment, Iran is controlling the Strait of Hormuz, which is the choke point between the Indian Ocean and the Persian Gulf. This choke point controls 10% to 14% of the annual gas consumption for Europe and as a whole. If you combine that with the bombing of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline in 2022, that total loss represents 22 to 28% of Europe's gas and energy needs. And that's why Europe's natural gas spot price at the moment is 300% higher than the spot price in the US. Now, in addition to that, 1/3 of all global seaborne trade in fertilizers pass through the Strait of Hormuz annually, and 50% of the global trade in urea and ammonia, both of which are critical in the production of natural or nitrogen fertilizers. Now, the point is, global agriculture is on the chopping block as well as energy. In the long term, the consequences of that could be catastrophic. Now, let me pause for just a second. This newsletter is not political. It's what I'm about to say is critical in trying to, compute the economic framework that we're dealing with and the timelines we may be facing. Case in point, Russia and China are aligned with Iran. Now, having said that, what I'm about to say is not conjecture or, just not my opinion. There are 2 points that are critical in this economic calculus. The first point, Russia has roughly a 4-to-1 advantage in immediate drone and ammunition manufacturing capacity than does Europe. Again, let me pause for just a second and let that sink in. Okay? Next, we'll look at China. And 2, 40% of U.S. Department of Defense weapons systems are dependent on Chinese production, and 78% of U.S. military weapons systems are considered vulnerable to Chinese critical minerals. That's because China controls at 90% of global rare earths manufacturing capacity. In my January newsletter, I made the pronouncement that I thought we were in a recession and listed out 27 economic indicators that pointed in that direction. Now, I want to add one more data point. That is the United States Net International Investment Position, or NIIP. It's not something that we often talk about or reference, but it will be over the next couple of years. The Net International Investment Position is essentially our balance sheet with foreign investors. It's simple accounting, assets minus liabilities. This is the U.S. Net International Investment Position. As you can see, from 2008 here to 2024, it's been going down, which means we've been adding liabilities. Now, let me make this as simple as I can. Let's say you can either be a banker or with money to lend, or you can be a borrower who needs money. Simple, right? Now, with the Net International Investment Position, in 2008, the NIIP liability position was around $10 trillion. Today, it's over $70 trillion, which means we've borrowed a ton of money. Now, let me tie this together. If you're Europe or Asia, and you've just lost 25% or more of your energy imports, you've just lost 30% or more of your fertilizer needs for agriculture, and 40% of all global trade is restricted, here's the question. What do you do? Again, let's make this simple. Let's say it's your family and it's your house. Let's just say you just lost your job. What do you do? Well, one thing you might do is sell some assets and put some money in your hand, and that's simple. Now, let's go back to Net International Investment Position. In this case, other investors and countries are the banker, and we're the borrower, and there is $70 trillion on the table. In this case, if they, being foreign investors and countries, need money, they sell U.S. treasuries. Now, the result is that bond prices go down and interest rates automatically go up, regardless of anybody's opinion. At the same time, they potentially sell the stock market, and obviously, stock prices go down. The point to all this is, how long will the Strait of Hormuz and the Gate of Tears to the Red Sea be closed or impacted? Now, right, wrong, or indifferent, these two choke points will affect the whole world. Now, today the question is, are we headed towards a global depression? Well, that's a serious statement, but I think it's a fair question. It all comes down to timing, and I don't think we're talking about a long period of time, really, to have a problem. I think we've got a rather short period of time. Now, honestly, nobody knows for sure, but when it comes to probabilities, if this goes on too long, we will have a global depression. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's just the numbers at this point. Until next month.